Hey everybody, I'm Jordan with PDQ.com.
I'm Josh.
Right, we're talking about monitoring. The picture explains it all.
We did it anyway.
We did it anyway. So what this takes is 4 pieces of software.
Okay.
Deploy inventory, I'm counting that as one because they're so good together. InfluxDB, which is a time series database for recording all the data so you can make your proper charts.
Okay.
Grafana that I use it does a little bit better showing the data.
So we got something to gather it, something to store it, something to visualize it.
Yep. And then PowerShell that I use to send the data between all of them.
The glue that holds it all together.
As always, PowerShell makes everything work better.
I like it.
All right, so I figured this one will just go through setting up everything. I'm going to do a lot of defaults. There's a lot more customization you can do, but this is just showing from 0 to monitoring.
So 0 to nothing, we're going to start. What are we going to start?
Influx.
So we're going to start with the database.
Yep, Influx. And for this one, I already installed this one just because it takes a little bit of time, but it's just if you go to Influx, they have the install string right there, wget.
So copy paste.
Yeah, copy paste. That will install it for you, puts it in there.
Okay.
If you do run Influx and you decide you don't like and you want to start over, but you can't find where it's stored because you're using the local system as the service, that's just right here, system32 config system profile, just be a .influxdb right there. Delete that, and that will be a clean.
And then you get a start over.
Yeah, that was more for me to make sure I cleaned up after our test. I did it.
Good job.
All right, next part is Grafana, which is same thing, download the site, it's just a executable. And it's also going to install something called nssm.exe, which allows you to take Influx and run it as a service instead of just having to actually just run it in the background. It just runs automatically.
By default, Influx is just going to be a spawned executable on the machine, but we want it to start up every time Windows does, so it makes it a service.
Absolutely. So
all right, so now we've got our database. We're going to run through, get our visualization layer with Grafana here.
Yep, and go super quick, I'm sure. Watch, it's going to take 10 minutes now.
I'd laugh. We'd have to talk about something else.
So the install on this is just program files, and then it's just Grafana, and then below that is Influx is the default location unless you change it.
Okay.
And there's not a whole lot to it when you first look at it. And when it is running, it is just localhost. The default port for Grafana is 3000, and the default port for InfluxDB is 8086.
Okay.
You can't change those.
So they're going to spawn their own little web server that you can hit them at those 2 places for config.
Yep. So now Grafana is installed. I'm going to go and use that nssm to build the service around Influx.
Okay. So we've got them installed, but now we got to make them a service. So nssm is going to help us out with that.
Grafana labs. Oh, not M. Just tab that.
Yep.
There we go. Then from that, it's nssm, and then it's just install.
Okay.
If I could spell it. And that's all. It's the service installer. So you pick the location of where you want it to run, give it a name, and that's pretty much it. So go in there. It's already in there. So program files, InfluxDB. So InfluxD is the database. This is if you just wanted to query the database from the command line. You'd use
but we want the actual database to spawn. Yep.
So then we're going to name this Influx, and boy, I hope I deleted that service. We're going to set it up to run as automatic. So one thing that we have learned from this is while it is set to automatic, it doesn't start it when it first creates it. So we're going to have to go to services just to get that one started real quick.
Okay.
And then we'll make sure that it actually loads up. Influx start.
All right, so now we've got Influx started. So our database is live, Grafana's live. And now it's time to start configuring them, right?
Yep, we're going to go in and see if we're going to make sure. Time to figure out if I messed up. Uh-oh. Okay.
You're good.
Wouldn't that have been a great start?
Yep.
So there's Influx. We'll try the Grafana as well, which is the same thing, localhost, only we're doing 3000 instead of 8086.
Sure.
The default for Grafana is just admin. And then we can change the password. I'm going to go real complex with this. Hunter2. Ooh. We'll see if I type the same password. All right, so that's in there. Congrats. All right, so now Influx is the same thing, get started. You can get very specific with this one, but we're going with a lot of defaults. Username, cool guy, loosely based on my life. Super complex password.
Yep.
The organization name, we're PDQ, in case you were wondering. And what's a good bucket name?
Stuff.
Stuff?
Yeah.
Stuff. Stuff's going in there.
Yeah. So I'm going to call it out again. bucket names, tables, things like that in Influx are case sensitive.
Yep. All right, continue. So that will go along, and we're just going to do a quick start. Advanced is nice. You can do things like change port and everything, do a lot of stuff with that, but we're just going quick on that one. So looking through, if you got your screenshot ready, I'm about to show our access token. So if you want to access this is how you're going to do that.
Yep.
So this is the organization ID. We're going to need that. And we're also going to need cool guys token right there. Everyone taking notes? There's no way I'm going to delete this after the webcast.
Yeah,
so this is going to work for you.
Yep.
It's permanent. It's forever.
Permanent. So what we want to do is I'm going to capture these within our password vault, just so later when I call it to write to the database, instead of having to have that in the script, we can just pull it out of the password vault.
So maybe go back, watch that previous webcast where you show how to leverage PowerShell and secrets and different, like it's a key pass vault, right?
Yes, KeyPass is the one I'm using for this one. There's a default Windows Store one, and they have for if you get just get module for secrets management, it's going to give you a list of everything it works for. It's quite extensive. So,
okay.
But we're using KeyPass because local is way easier for me.
Okay.
All right, and I'm going to look at I've already forgot my command. It's set secret. Set secret, and then the vault webcast.
Okay.
Name, and this is just whatever we're going to name, so we can call it up later.
Friendly name.
So what did I say? This one was the access token, right?
I think so.
And so we'll call it Influx access, and then the secret is going to be just in parentheses get dash credential.
Okay.
All right. So the user, this one doesn't matter since it's just the token, but we do have to have something in there.
Uh-huh.
And then the password is going to be
well, we just copied from
the access token we
Influx.
copied.
Okay.
So that's in our credential vault. Now we've got to do the same thing for the organization ID.
All right.
So we're going back to there.
And again, we're just setting up access.
Yeah, this is all just setting up. We're going to use this when we do the query. We're also going to use that information when it comes time to set Grafana to pull it over.
Okay.
So the organization ID, same thing. We're just going to copy that and take notes. We want to be able to steal our data. And this one, so instead of Influx access, we'll just call it Influx org.
All right.
I should probably look at the script, the parameters that I put, and name it based on what's in there. Too late.
Again, username doesn't really matter because it's just a token.
And then that's the user ID. And then this is where, it's probably not a bad idea as well to set up the actual login access to Influx, just because we did change that password. And if you're locked out of that, tough.
Start over.
Yeah. So, I'm not going to because I believe in me. And also that password I set was ridiculous. All right. So now that we have everything captured, we're going to go back into Grafana and we're going to set Influx as a query language.
Okay. So now we've got access to InfluxDB. We know how to write to it. So now let's go set up Grafana so that it can pull from InfluxDB.
Yep. So just configuration data sources. We're going to add one and it's just right in there.
Hey, look at that. There's InfluxDB.
All right, and so InfluxQL is if you're using Influx version 1 point something is in there. Flux is for the later version. I prefer this one. With InfluxQL, you actually have to authenticate with full credentials, where this is the one that will allow you to use your token.
Okay.
Went in there and put in. They even tell you what that one is.
Yeah. So we're just local host because we're running on the same machine.
So this is where if you were not on your local host, but you're accessing it in some way, this is where you'd have to have the right ports open. And then you'd have to type in the name of that address. I'm not worried about basic auth. The organization was, what did I say, PDQ?
I think so.
All right. Then we're going to come in, or PDQ. All right, so we're going to go back into our tokens. For those that didn't get notes last time, there's our access
grab Cool
token.
Guys token.
Yep, and that goes into there. And the last one is the default bucket, which I believe was stuff.
Yep.
And we're going to save and test. 3 buckets found, it means successful. So now this is going to officially query Influx.
Yep.
That's all the back end. That's how everything does work. Now the next part is how do we get data into Influx so we can start building our dashboards.
Okay.
And I use PowerShell because that's what I use for everything.
Why not?
I'm not going to change it up. And I just use a PowerShell scanner that I'll make here in just a bit. But the PowerShell, if you wanted to see it, it's just this monitoring one, where we have parameters for services, processes, and ports. So if you're tracking things like that, like if you want to know if port 80 is open, that's where you could define this. And we're just grabbing things like hard drive health, data utilization, CPU, memory usage, just basic stuff. If you wanted to track something that's not there, you put it into the script, you add it into the hash table at the end, and then if you do the scan, it goes and puts it into the table. So instead of going over each one, it's just a lot of just.
There's a bunch of you're either querying WMI, you're querying all kinds of different things here to just return data to a PS custom object.
It also queries for login events for 15 minutes back. So if anyone is logged in within the last 15 minutes, that will pop up. That's all customizable here. And then site is if you have multiple sites and you want to be able to define on your dashboard, not just CPU utilization, but CPU utilization for site 3 or 2 or whatever. That's just an option in there.
Okay.
I don't think I've used it. I just put it in there for those that have more computers than our lab.
They want to group objects together.
All right, so just scan profiles. We're going to go, there's the new button. Found it. Name it monitoring.
PowerShell scanner, right?
Yeah, PowerShell scanner. And then since we have the script written, we can just point it to that. If I can spell monitoring again. I don't know if
you got an extra R in there, but I think it's fine.
Well, it's all what's going to run, right? We're going to be using the ID instead of the title, so I'm too lazy to fix it. All right, so we're just going to go to the PS1 file that we just showed there.
Sure.
And then the last part, if you look down here in the parameters, you see services, processes, and string. And I'm going to see if I can use the highlighter for JJ there.
That's a win.
Yeah. That's where you could pass through those arguments into the script for the certain things you're looking for.
Sure.
I pre-built those as variables already. I'll show that in just a bit. But so services, and then we go into our custom variables and use the services one.
Okay.
And just do that.
So now you're mixing variables. You've got stuff that's already stored in inventory, and then you've got custom variables in the script, and you can mix and match those, right?
Yeah, and so this way, instead of having to modify the script, if you want to, we need to, like say the spooler service, print nightmare comes back.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure the printer spooler is disabled, you could add that into the services, and it would just automatically add to future queries.
Nice.
What did I say the last one was? Processes?
Yes, sir.
I can't spell processes. Give me 1 second. Oh, that's so close. And the same thing, we're going to add that variable processes.
Nice.
That's in there, it's running. I'm going to kick that off, and then I'll show where the variables are.
Okay.
So scan collection with...
Monitoring.
No, the scan name is correct. It's the actual scan profile that was wrong. All right, so if you just do options variables, it's just in here. And just if you want multiple, it's just comma separated. So I'm looking at the WinRM service. Basically, can you run commands remotely against this one? Mm-hmm. And is the spooler service running as the previous example? And then port 8086, because, you could do 80 or 7086, I think, has some sort of security implications.
Yeah, any open port.
Yep. And then the processes, in this case, if inventory is running on that machine, it will find that process, and it gives you the process ID.
Okay.
All right. Now that that's running, it's going to take just a little bit of time. We're going to go into deploy. So this is the first part. You're going to want to set this. Go ahead.
All right. So just to recap, we've got InfluxDB, time series database. That's where we're eventually going to store all of this data that PDQ Inventory is gathering.
Yep. So this is all gathering in inventory. You're going to want to set a trigger. I set it for every 30 minutes.
Okay. So because it's time series, it's going to store each one of these individually.
Yep. So every 30 minutes, it's going to scan in here. And the next part where I query our product and put that into the time series, that runs also every 30 minutes, but it's on a 15-minute stagger.
Okay, so it's a collect, wait 15 minutes, push it into time series, collect again 15 minutes, push it in.
Yeah, so it's not officially inactive, but it's about 30-minute delay. And you can manually kick stuff off if you want to rush that one in there.
And then eventually, we're going to tie this whole thing up with Grafana, visualizing all this into pretty graphs and charts.
Yep. And do we have a question?
Sure, let's take a question.
Yep, we do have one question. Are there any important security considerations with this solution? Marcel L.
So on this one, where I'm running everything local, the ports aren't really open outside the machine. I'm just doing it local. So the Grafana, everything's on my inventory. So inventory's going out and doing the query, which is secure. And then it brings back in there. Everything else runs within the machine. But the ports that are open aren't open there. If you wanted this to be like up on a dashboard that prints up on the TV through a different machine, you'd have to open up the ability to connect to that one. So there's some web service.
And the other web services, like by default right now, we're just running these all plain text, HTTP, staying on the same machine. We kind of glanced over it in the beginning when we set up Influx and Grafana. We did the absolute bare minimum.
Yep, and like the things like the access token is encrypted to this machine and this logged in user. Mm-hmm. So if they get the code that pulls in that, it's not going to work. It's only here. So you could use like a key file and make it so it works on multiple machines, but in this case, it runs on this machine and this machine only. Otherwise, it's not going to decrypt.
Yep. Cool. So now we've got our scan data, right? And now we got to get that scan data into InfluxDB, and we're going to use deploy to do that.
Yep, and that one, and you can set this also as a scheduled task on however you want to do that one. And that's all this one is, and I'm sure I'm out of best practice on this one, but within the parameters, I'm actually building the credential object to unlock it.
Okay.
And it's just because param blocks load first, and so where the token and organization I'm grabbing from the param block, either I had to pull those out of the param block or put the other thing in it, and I just told to put it in there, and I have no idea if that's best practice. Where it won't
I understood
decrypt,
some of those words.
Where it won't decrypt anything except for on this machine, I'm not terribly worried about it, but if you were passing this across other machines, just having the default parameter to decrypt your credentials seems like a very bad idea.
It does.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see if that's best practice or not in the future. So the other thing we just got to grab, we have the token organization, we have the bucket, which was stuff, case sensitive.
Yep.
And then the PS scan ID is the last one I need, and this is for the scanner we just built.
Ooh, how do we get that?
So you can either export that scanner as an XML, open up the XML, it's going to put the number in there, or you can load up the database with use DB browser for SQLite.
And this is the inventory database because each scanner has a unique ID, and we need to tell our PowerShell script which scanner ID to go get the data from.
Yes, and so in this one we're going program data, admin arsenal, inventory, and that's our database there.
Yep.
So if you just go to browse data and scroll down to PowerShell scanners.
Okay.
From the table here, PowerShell scanners, we're looking for monitoring. It's this right there. This is the ID that we need. This is the unique identifier for the SQL query.
So every time that scanner runs, it's going to use this ID to write data for that computer.
Yes, so if you rebuild the scanner, you're going to want to grab the new ID.
Gotcha.
I already closed it, so I hope I copied the right thing.
I think you did.
Yeah, we'll find out. And that just puts that basically right in there. Mm-hmm. All right, and so all this is doing a SQL query. It's going to come back, and every object is going to be a string, and it's going to be delimited by a pipe, which is not what we want. So with a query, we're delimiting by pipe. Then we're going into each object, and we're like if it says drive, which means it's going to be a hard drive or memory, we're looking for an integer. It's going to manually change that. And for timestamp, it's very specific. For time series, you have to go out a lot of zeros to write to a time series. So this one, going to the milliseconds seems extreme, but to get to the time series, it's going to throw up in here unless you have that for that one.
Okay. So this is the magic glue that's taking the SQLite database, taking those data types in SQLite, converting them to their proper data type for a time series database, and then putting it into InfluxDB.
Yep. Otherwise, if you don't do the conversion, it's going to send everything over as a string, and then when you start looking for CPU utilization,
it just is a string and it's not an actual integer where it should be. Yeah.
So now that we have all, we're going to save that script and put it into deploy.
Okay.
I could just run it here. It's the same thing. So it's just, if you build a package, goes into deploy, it run against dot or the name of the machine. Since it's a local and it's going to run the script, but we'll just run it live so we can see if I did it right live.
Okay. Hey, I don't see any red, so that's good.
It's already doing way better than last time. So that takes everything from our scanner. I guess if we wanted to show the results.
Sure.
We'll go to, we'll say Babbitt.
Yep.
And we're going to go monitoring. There's the typo. And that's everything we're gathering. So spooler service running, WinRM is 1% CPU utilization. Not a lot going on.
Not a lot on Babbitt.
Not a lot going on.
Yep. So this is what was written to the SQLite database, and then we just pulled all this over and put it into InfluxDB, the time series database.
Yep. So if we now go over to the time series database and stop showing off our token there, Data Explorer by default. So if we go in there, stuff, we define the table. I'm going to just go full screen. Hopefully that doesn't cause a problem. Yeah, so stuff, that's the name of the bucket. We input it as a server, which in the PowerShell script on the bottom line, right, Influx server, the measure is server. That's what it builds. You can put anything you want in there. That's what can do that. And then this is how it specifies the name for each individual computer when it includes it. And there's including the hash table and the tokens that you need with the bucket and everything. Okay. So that's just everything it needs to sync. So we're just going to go server. We're going to grab, instead of a specific machine, we're going to go filled and say C drive % free.
Okay.
See, and nothing's showing up because time series database, we've got 1 point of entry, so there is no time series. But if
so
we
you
go
need 2. Yeah, it depends on the visualization type you want, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to do a line, you've got to have 2 points to draw that line. But if it's just a gauge, like, this is it at this point in time.
Yep. So, and then where we have the gauge, okay. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat. So if we hide the gauge, or I had the gauge at 1 point, where if you're looking for multiple, we have to have multiple data points. And then what we ran here, where stuff server, we're looking for just that. If you come in and hit script editor, this is the query that you want to put into Grafana.
Oh, so we use InfluxDB to kind of get that first glimpse of what we want.
Is it pre-built? It'll help you build out your query.
Yep.
And then you come into Grafana, and we're going to go into dashboards.
Sure.
Or first we'll just do explore, just so we can kind of just show it live there.
So is this where we add our query?
Boy, I hope so.
That we just built from Influx?
Maybe I don't want to explore. I'll just build a new dashboard. How's that?
Sure, let's do it.
Where is my dashboard? We're going to need that, or we're going to have a hard time. No recently viewed dashboards. Oh, here's my problem. There's no data in this one. We've only run the one time for the query.
Yep.
I actually have a Julia Childs did. Here's a different computer.
Oh, that's right.
That's why I didn't have my dashboards. So this has a longer history, and I have some pre-built ones. I'll show the query part in just a bit.
Okay.
But I have things like spooler service, like when we had Print Nightmare, you have a list of machines that has it running, so you can kind of keep track of that, get it cleared up. Or if a new machine comes on where the service isn't disabled, next time it scans, it's going to pop up in there.
Okay, so you've gone through and built this dashboard already because you had to have multiple scans.
Multiple data points, yep.
To be able to do a lot of this.
And this is where, Grafana, it's not my favorite. I can get it to work, but when you first start diving into it, it's not all intuitive. So in this one, where to get this result, I had to come into transforms the data. So the query we put in there.
So this is the query that we built from InfluxDB as we were looking for our data.
Yep.
We're going to take that same exact query, but let Grafana run it because its visualization layer is significantly better than InfluxDB.
You have to go in and say change its series to rows, which kind of tilts the data on the axis, how it's going to show up in the table.
Mm-hmm.
And then we basically want the field last, which is there, the last column, is equal to running. So if you want it to be who has it stopped, it'd be that quick change there, and it's going to, we'll go back and modify. No one has spooler stopped for security purposes. Woo-hoo. Same thing with WinRM. If this one's the same one, but I'll just go and make that change just so we can show that the transform does actually work.
Yep. So we were looking to a stop value, but now we're going to look maybe to a running value.
For the people that want to, break in, these are the ones that will allow you to run some WinRM.
Yep.
So just kind of running dashboard on that one. This next one is Cputemp. A lot of the machines we have are VMs, so the Cputemp is 0 because it's not hosted there.
It doesn't get exposed to that.
So we did a little bit different. So I'll go and I'll showcase the gauge on this one. You can see microverse is a little bit warm, and the dates the metrics or thresholds I set on this are not probably what's ideal. These are just ones that I put in there so we have data show up basically as microverses.
Yeah, so these are some physical machines that are floating around here.
Yep. So in that one, it's the same thing. We got the query, the field or measurement server. Field is disk 0 temperature. Mm-hmm. And then we had I put in the value greater than or equal to 1. That means all 0, so all VMs are eliminated.
This was a query that you built in InfluxDB, and that now you're letting Grafana display it in a pretty graphs.
Yeah, the last one for the value, I did my own. I just basically copied what was up there and changed the field to the value in there.
Nice.
The big one on this one, this transforms, is all I'm doing is removing the name because it has disk 0 temperature, then the computer name .web.pq.com, and I just did regex removal to have just the name of the computer.
Instead of the FQDN.
Yeah. And then this one, the way we track it is, first of all, with the standard option, I set this to 100. That means the gauge is always 0 to 100. Obviously, the temperature, that doesn't necessarily make sense. Just because it's not a 0 to 100 proposition, but this was just for the example. And that changes, like if I change that to 0 or to leave it to auto, it's going to change the 46 is the greatest one, so it bases it off of 46.
Okay, so this is where you need to set like your min-max.
Yes. So if you did like max, I don't know, what's too warm in Celsius on processors?
I mean, even 100 Celsius is
so
probably pretty warm.
I was, just by pure accident, 100 was the correct one.
Yeah.
And this is where you come in, you add the threshold. So anything over 75 will show up red.
Yeah.
And then 40, I don't think 40 degrees Celsius, I don't think that's too hot. But
That's not too hot. I mean, 40 Celsius is still pretty warm, but not for a processor.
Yeah, and then, so I guess we want to showcase some other ones. We have the CPU utilization. This one is the first where it shows the line graph, and all I did was set the minimum threshold. I set it to 15 so we could see some of the results. But like if you're only looking for anything over 50% utilization, you could change that there. The top end is set to auto, so since nothing went over 72, it's set there. Earlier, let's see if I go back. Let's go back a day.
Sure. This is where that time series is really useful.
Series. Yeah, so for a while there, Sam was running real high at 93 up in the red. So just based on the time that's in there. So whatever time frame works best for you, just want to sit there. I had, I think 2 was the ones in there. And this will modify based on that, but anytime it hits the threshold you saw, it went to red, where that's too much utilization. It's just kind of an active map of machines, so you kind of see if something's been running bad for a long time. All right, and the last one is C drive utilization, and this is real. Our WSF server has 7% free space on its C drive.
It's WSUS, that's what it does.
Yeah. And this one, this is where we're talking about Grafana. You can't invert the y-axis, which is very frustrating. So in this case, low is worse. You want to be able to track that. You can't do that one. So I went in and changed it a bit to be, instead of that, I set it as a stat. Where I think bugs for a while dropped because the database had grown. I don't think I had the database set to throw away old data right now, so it's just going to constantly grow.
Okay, so another one of those things that we call out in the setup. The setup was bare minimum. It is a time series database. This thing can grow to be massive.
Yep. So if you go to the bucket and we clicked on, apparently I named this one Steve.
Steve stuff.
This bucket is Steve. You can go there. You can define how long it's going to keep it. Right now it is set to never get rid of any sort of data.
Okay.
So if you only want X amount of time, you can change that there.
Yeah.
This is going to constantly grow until I delete it here in about 20 minutes.
Makes sense.
All right. And it's the same thing on this one. The transform is just cleaning up the title. The query we built over, I just set the minimum value of less than or equal to 55. So basically, if the temperature is less than 55, I don't care about it. And then if it's 0, I ignore it as well. And it's the same thing where we're messing with thresholds on that one. We just switch the colors, basically. So the base is red, and so the lower it gets. I would like that to be a line graph, but not being able to invert the y-axis
makes that impossible, and you got to do this.
That's incredibly aggravating, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, do you have any other questions? Or this is just kind of way we're basically actively querying everything, building up a time series database, and you can build kind of an active dashboard. I think dashboard is just kind of a quick win where you can throw it up where your manager can go and say, hey, that's neat. But you could set other kinds of alerts basically on the threshold. You could have it set an action within, you could do that in InfluxDB action. If this exceeds this number, then perform like email or send information. So you can get more granular and specific. I just built the dashboard just because that's kind of the quick win for us.
So you can get this to send an email out if it meets a particular threshold?
Yeah, so you can set actions based on the results of things for your query and have it perform. So if it gets over a certain thing or below a certain thing, you can have it alert in a certain way. So it's not just on the dashboard. The dashboard is just visual.
Yep.
But
so there's that entire subsection that is, you probably fire off a webhook, fire off an email, fire off XYZ.
Yeah, they have a whole series of... I think to go into everything Influx and Grafana could do like that would be its own amount of webcast. That would be a big deep dive.
Awesome.
All right. Do you have any questions?
We do have a few, a couple related and some that are just random, so let's get to it.
All right.
If someone wants to implement this solution, will they get the support from the support team? Marcel L.
This free solution?
I'll go ahead and answer for them. No, they'll help you with the inventory with the scanner part, but
and the
Grafana and InfluxDB, you're on your own with these. These are they're free tools that you can play with your heart's content.
You could probably ask maybe Grafana or Influx's support.
Just make sure you're on Docker or Unix, or they don't care about you.
Exactly. And next question, is this only monitoring computers, or can you scan for switches or printers?
So where I'm using inventory, that's Windows devices only. It's not saying you can't do switches or printers.
Yes.
You just would have to use the API or some way, however you're querying them, and then you'd have to modify the script that I have. So basically, you want to, after you query that device, however you're going to do that, whether it's Active API or whatever, how that data returns, you're going to want to do similar to what we have on the monitoring.
Throw it into a different bucket in InfluxDB. So you're going to have to return that data some other way into a bucket in InfluxDB. But now you've already built the connection between InfluxDB and Grafana.
Yeah. Also, where the SQL query makes it so it's all string, I don't know if that's going to be relevant. So you just want to make sure at the end result, however you're querying that data, it goes into a hash table, and the date time where it goes down to the milliseconds is critical for actually being able to write to it. As long as you append that to the end of your data and you have the name of the device you're putting in there, it's going to write with the same write influx. It's just getting the data in is going to be different.
Make sure your data types are correct.
Yep.
All right, more of a general question here. Is there a way to get the description or other fields for a PC into the notification emails that come out from PDQ deploy? Sincerely, Adam N.
So we were talking about this in the pre-show or before the pre-show?
I came up with a kind of solution that can work, and it's going to involve using the CLI and deploying it out and updating your custom fields. So
a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, this is good. The answer is yes, but it's going to take a lot of work. So the way I thought of it was you're going to want to send out a deployment that's going to run on that machine. It's going to collect all the data that you want. And then the end of that script, after it collects the data, instead of just returning it as the result you want, since you're not changing anything, you're going to want to call the CLI on the local server. Since the credentials it's using are the deploy credentials, it should be able to call that CLI.
So you're executing on a remote machine, but then you're going to call the CLI local
and update the custom field for that one.
Local.
And then you want to use the custom field that's then updated on the scan or the deployment into the email notification. It's a lot of moving parts. I'm sure it's going to be clunky and ugly, but I think it would work. But Josh's face says
it sounds like it'll work.
It would technically work. That's a lot for, I don't think, a big payoff.
Josh is like, yeah, sure, why not?
I think it'll work. Conceptually, it sounds like it will work. Right?
I think your face is the real answer.
And here's a long one, so pay attention. I'm starting to use schedules a lot, and I have some recurring tasks I'd like to convert from queue to heartbeat schedule. Is there a way to do a heartbeat schedule that would do its thing only after X days it hasn't been done on a specific PC? I'm thinking something that would act a little like standard scanner. Julian L.
So, I mean, heartbeat is always going to be after the machine registers as offline and then comes online on inventory. I don't know if there's a way. So you could have different schedules, but I don't know how to make.
Yeah, I would say that you're probably thinking about the way of doing this in a different context. Use the heartbeat trigger for firing off, but all of the logic on when to do something, build that into a collection. And then your schedule, target the collection, because inventory has way more utility in able to specifically target machines based on whatever criteria you want. And then just let the heartbeat trigger fire when the machine comes from offline to online. So split your logic and targeting into inventory and let deploy just do the actual deployments.
Okay, we have 2 questions remaining in the queue. Is there a way to find computers with the old version of Quick Assist before it was changed to update through the Windows Store? We have the Apex package ready to go in PDQ. Store is blocked. Thanks in advance, the Daz Band.
So I don't know what you would want to query to get your Quick Assist version. I don't know enough about Quick Assist to get that. I do know the store technically just does the Apex package. So if you have that, I mean, it should work. But as far as tracking versions, I'd have to research that.
Yeah, and you did a webcast on Apex package management using deployed inventory in PowerShell. that might be worth a quick watch. There might be enough information in there to get you going in the right direction.
Yeah, I think for that one where he's already got the Apex built, it's more about just how can we track Smart Assist, and I don't know how to build that scanner. I don't know
either
enough about Smart Assist to give a good answer. I'm sorry on that one.
All right, our final question of the day. Any PDQ solutions for deleting old Windows user profiles after not being used for XX days? Ray.
I mean, it feels like you absolutely could do it with PowerShell.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to come down to you're looking for last write time. I just don't know if the user profile folder itself updates at the right time or if it's something specific in there.
Yeah, I'd probably look at like the desktop, because that's going to get touched.
So if the desktop hasn't updated in X number of days, then so you're going to want to, with PowerShell, go see users, and then see users asterisk, scroll through every user into the desktop to get the last read time or write time, whichever one works best.
Yep.
And if it is over a certain number of days, then delete the entire tree from the...
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just pop that into a PDQ deploy package, attach that to a schedule, and away you go.
Okay. It sounds like that's another thing. That sounds like it would work, but it's be very careful. Test thoroughly on that one before you go live. What if it's big? Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm very passionate about this one. I love creating this dashboard just because, I mean, there's Nagios, which is free, but most of the time if you're looking at any sort of monitoring, you're looking at a big paycheck, and this is creating. I think recreating a lot of that for.
And I love pushing utilities to do things that they're not meant to do. So this is right up my alley. I think
so I appreciate letting me talk about this one again. For PDQ.com, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Josh.
Thanks for joining our webcast today. Congratulations, Adam N., winner of the PDQ Custom Mechanical Keyboard. Well done. Just send us your info at webcast@pdq.com. And if you wouldn't mind, please like and subscribe to our YouTube.